a lot. 4 Shock, 4 Lightning Strike, 4 Skull Crack, 4 Mammoth, 4 Boros Charm, 4 War Leader's Helix, 4 Chain of the Rocks, 1 main deck Toil and Trouble, and some lands. I mean, this is a deck that's about just burning people out. You have a lot of dead cards against aggressive decks, but ideally you have Boros Reckoner shoring up that matchup a little bit, and a lot of non-interactive elements to this deck.
So we're going to see Walton versus Fabiano. Walton on your left. He's on the play. He's going to come out here with a Magma Jet main phase right now to your face to ensure that he can scry. So it seems like the scry here is probably quite important, as he's opting to main phase this, so he wants the help right away, as Fabiano just leading off for the Hallowed Fountain, which could mean there's a counterspell on the horizon. So
yeah, Magma Jets are actually really important for this deck setting up its hands. You need to draw the right mixture of spells. You need to make sure that you have your right color mana set up, and so
by Magma Jetting now, you open yourself up to Pack Rat.
Possibly, it's very likely he has other removal spells for it in his hand. But if your Magma Jets get syncopated or negated, those are actually often the things gluing your hands together.
Yeah.
So,
well, there's a shock. So Pack Rat's going to bite the dust. And Mutavault is summoning 6, so it cannot come into the red zone just yet, as Fabiano is going to draw a card. Now, it's not often that you see Hallowed Fountain side by side with Pack Rat. But this is a different take, as here's an Ashiok, a card that we have not seen a ton of, but it's going to go milling Walton. I say milling, but it's actually going to go exiling. So there's a War Leader's Helix, there's a Sacred Foundry, and there's another copy of War Leader Helix for the Ashiok. Planeswalker that hit the scene in a big way. You almost forget about it. Yeah. You know, because we haven't seen it a lot. We saw it in the first weeks, and, you know, then people kind of, you know, flip-flopped on it. It's not very good. It's insane. All right, it's not very good again. The truth is probably somewhere in between, but we haven't seen it for a little while, and it is a very nice tool against some strategies.
Yeah, against other control decks, the threat of just milling for the entire game and eventually going ultimate is a real thing. And then against creature decks, it has a ton of loyalty. And if you're regularly finding 2 and 3 cost creatures off the Ashiok activations, they actually do a lot of work. So certainly not an all-star and a little bit overhyped thus far, but it's got some game against both controlling and really aggressive decks.
I mean, I've said this a lot about this card, but when's the last time you saw a card go from underhyped to overhyped to underhyped? Again, just from like everyone's like, this card's terrible, to this card is, oh my god, it's so good, to, yeah, this card's just okay, it's not very good, I've moved on from it. You see Boros Reckoner and Chandra's Phoenix is going to be turned over here via Ashiok. It's kind of crazy how that, you know, it just kind of went through its lifespan. And all of about, 10 days.
Yeah. That
all happened.
And Kasey's taking a slightly different tack to these games than I like to against control decks. It's really incumbent on you to, try to win the game fairly early, because the threat of Sphinx's Revelation looms. So I really value just keeping as much burn in hand as possible. I don't think I would have been battling over this Ashiok. I think I would have chained the rock the Pack Rat instead of shocking it, for example.
Sure.
It's really, you have every extra land that you draw and every removal spell that can't go to the face. These are all dead draws, and it's really hard to beat Esper if you have too many of them.
You see Walton Sandy, it looks like he has 2 copies of Chain of the Rocks. He does have a Boros Charm, Sacred Foundry, and a kind of a mystery card hanging out there. Might be a Skull Crack, but either way, Jace and Ashiok are here. Jace did take up last turn, so that Mutavault's going to be very ineffective. And Walton's, he's in some trouble here right now.
Yeah, it's really hard to use your resources fighting Planeswalkers when you're playing a burn deck.
You basically have to ignore him, I would think, or, to the best of your ability.
Yeah, exactly. There's some spots where you can't afford to. There's also some spots where they make it very easy, They've Jason minus hit, you have a Magma Jet, all right, cool, take care of it. But by and large, you want to be ignoring them because you just can't commit your resources that way.
Walton going to cast Boros Charm, going to redirect it over to Jace, so it's going to go down to 1, and now he can finish it off with Mutavault. So, yes, he got taken care of, but that's 1 less Boros Charm that's going to be going to Fabiano's face.
And Gerrard's life total is still a very comfortable 18.
18 is a lot. See, Fabiano drew a Thoughtseize for the turn. Curious to see if he even cares to fire this off.
Also, for the record, the Esper/blue-white matchups, when I've been playing Burn, have been by far the worst matchups. I mean, it's not even close.
It seems very tough.
It's really hard to beat counter spells and Thoughtseize and Sphinx's Revelation. That package is, and you can't really break up their draws with burn spells. Beatdown decks, you can use some of your removal on their creatures to buy time and all that, but here you just have to race with burn, and that's hard to do against a deck that has counter spells and Sphinx's Revelation.
Boros Reckoner going to come in from Ashiok here. See if Fabiano wants to fire from Mutavault. He does, so he's going to come into the red zone. Let's see what his follow-up's going to play if he has one. 2 mana. Yeah, he got a pack rat. So pretty nice turn there from Gerrard. Uses all of his mana, gets a little bit of damage across. Ashiok puts in a Boros Reckoner, which is public enemy #1 for a red deck. Fortunately for Walton, he has Chain to the Rocks in his hand to take care of that, but he's still in a world of trouble here.
Yep. The matchup against Esper and Blue White in my mind is so bad that I actually cut Boros Charm from the main deck and added Mizium Mortars because there was no point to even trying to compete against Control Decks game 1.
Sure. You'd rather be better against Devotion
exactly,
and stuff like that, yeah.
If my matchup against Blue White goes from 5% to 3%, it's like, okay, well, whatever.
Yeah, but if you raise your Devotion matchups from 70 to 75,
yeah,
not something that high, but you know what I mean. That's a big deal.
It goes from 45 to 55 or something like that. It's a big difference, So
Chain of the Rocks takes down a pack rat. I think we're going to see Chain of the Rocks take down this Minotaur Wizard that is Boros Reckoner too. That's exactly what that's going to do. So, 2 creatures taken care of, and we could see Mutavault take care of this Ashiok now too. That's actually a pretty good turn for Walton.
Yeah, and on the surface of these looks like good exchanges. He's keeping his head above water and all that stuff, but, Gerrard is just getting a lot of time. His draw steps are much more powerful, and every counterspell, every Planeswalker, every Revelations he finds, these are all really hard for Kasey to fight through.
Thoughtseize is going to reveal a Skull Crack. That's going to go to the graveyard. Gerrard's going to save himself 1 point of damage. See, the top card's going to go to the bottom there from the temple. And now here's another copy of Ashiok from Fabiano. Time to go milling. There's a mountain, a second mountain, and a lightning strike all to the bin. And Ashiok's actually kind of weak in this matchup because you take a look at Walton's list. He only has 8 creatures. He's got 4 Chandra's Phoenix and 4 Boros Reckoner. Of course, Mutavault can't be put into play off of Ashiok, so not a lot of creatures to hit.
Yeah, but the upside is that the creatures that he does have to hit are really, like Boros Reckoner especially, can be really good. So plussing Ashiok, hitting a Reckoner, then minusing it, getting a Reckoner into play, and keeping Ashiok in play can be pretty good sometimes. I agree overall, it's not its best here, but I've had Ashiok be good against me in spots.
Sure. Mutavault coming in.
And Kasey, I think at this point, is correctly ignoring this Ashiok. You can't fight over these cards anymore.
Knock it down to, goes +2 on Fabiano's turn. Might as well start going towards the head. Maybe peel off a series of draws here. You see 3 cards turned over: Boros Charm, a Skull Crack, and a Mountain. But maybe he runs off a series of draws that allows him to just burn Fabiano out since he is at 14. This looks like a burn spell, and it is. Magma Jet going to go upstairs.
And that's a good one to draw too, as he can set up future draws, of course.
Take a look at the top 2 cards. There's a Chain of the Rocks and something else hiding out over there.
I believe it is Shock.
Ah, the old Shack. Shack, yeah.
Shock is actually kind of attractive to keep here because if Fabiano tends to trade Mutavaults here, Shock can be good.
Agreed.
But it's also low impact, and Kasey's just moving them both to the bottom, which I think is also fine.
Take a draw. Looks like maybe we fire Mutavault again. Mutavault having a 3-color deck is pretty risky, but as you mentioned, and you have numerous times, that's just how powerful Mutavault is.
Yeah.
Is that even though your deck is 3 colors and you're stretching your mana a lot, Mutavault's so good that you want to have it in every deck that you possibly can, including a 3-color one. And
Gerrard is historically known to not be conservative with his mana. I mean, he definitely stretches his mana bases as far as they can go.
Watery Grave after Fabiano does activate the Ashiok. Going to put Ashiok up to 9. And that's a Temple of Triumph there from Walton. Leaving that on the top is probably not going to do very much just because Ashiok's going to take care of whatever this card is. So he will just put it straight to the bottom. Fabiano untaps that Watery Grave. He takes a draw step. Ashiok. Time for a little more mill action. This could actually just be Fabiano's win condition in this matchup. Is just mill you out. Chandra's Phoenix going to come in. And of course, maybe find a creature or 2. And now there's a Master Waves. That will actually accelerate winning a little bit too. Protection from red, quite good in this matchup. Only going to get 2 elementals, but 2 elementals might be more than enough right now.
Yeah, he doesn't need a ton of pressure. The only thing that matters at this point is his life total. He's at 12, which is, kind of scary range. Cards like War Leader's Helix can give Kasey some time and maybe let him race, but he's not really concerned with how many tokens he gets off Master here. Just protect his life total. You see Gerrard reading Toil and Trouble, getting himself familiar with the cards in Kasey's deck. Looks like Gerrard is
It's called the red zone, man.
just milling, just racing against himself here.
That's where we're at. It's called the red zone. He's got both angles covered. He's taking down your deck and your life total. We just need something with infect out there.
No zone is safe.
Yeah. Here's a War Leader's Helix. We're going upstairs. Fabiano going to go down to 8. Walton actually going to gain 4 life, which could be pretty important here.
Yeah, no, this is a lot of time that he's getting here. I don't know if Gerrard has any counter spells in his list, but he is still at the mercy of Kasey having some good running draw steps.
Probably wondering the spells that Fabiano has in this innovative deck. 4 Jace, 2 Ashiok, and an Elspeth to go along with 3 Devour Flesh, 4 Detention Sphere, a Far and Away, Hero's Downfall, and 4 copies of Thoughtseize. Here's a Chandra's Phoenix. That's going to bite the dust from Hero's Downfall. So no counter spells in his main deck. We'll get to the sideboard after this one's over. We'll see if there are any hiding out over there as Fabiano's going to take a draw. Wants to see what's going on over yonder. How many cards do I need to mill?
His deck is a little more proactive. You know, he has Master Waves and Ashiok. Counter spells aren't as good here as they are in your typical Esper list.
So he says, give me that Phoenix. Let me up the clock here. Put you on a 2-turn clock. Attack for 8 this turn. Attack for 8 in the next. That'll be 16. See him mill that down. So Walton's going to be at 8. Now another War Leader's Helix could prove to be important here. I think it might take running War Leader's Helix to actually win this one, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, running War Leader's Helix or War Leader's Helix into Boros Charm.
Oof. That's your kind of magic.
There it is. For exact 0.
Which is where you like to leave them. Where
Exactly.
it's all said
0.
and done. You want to leave them at exactly 0. Here's an attack for 8. Do we have an answer? We do not. So Gerrard Fabiano is going to win the first game here. Esper Devotion. You read that right. That's what that says. Most of the time it says Esper Control. No, Esper Devotion. Winning game for Kasey Walton in his Boros Burn deck. And oh no, Kasey shook his hand.
Oh no,
the big mistake.
The trap.
That's Gerrard's trick. Now the sweat comes across. Now you can't even sideboard appropriately. Oh no.
He's infected.
Yeah. So whose sideboard do you want to start with first? We'll start with Walton's, I guess?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
2 Wear Terror, 2 Curious Instinct, 2 Anger of God, 3 Toil and Trouble. He has 1 in his main deck. 3 Assemble Legion, 3 Spark Trooper. I do like Toil and Trouble in control matchups quite a bit. He actually has 4 copies of Temple of Silence to actually allow him sometimes to cast the black half of the split card, and it's pretty powerful against control decks in general. He has 3 copies of Assembled Legion. A lot of people bring these in against control decks kind of no matter what's going on. I dislike them against decks that have Jace. I think in my mind it's more or less just for mono black where we want to Assemble Legion, but you may see Kasey bring in here, as I know a lot of people just think Assemble Legion's pretty powerful just across the board. And Spark Trooper is another card that you see in some lists that you can bring them against beatdown matchups that are quite swingy there. You can also bring against Esper because haste is just pretty good against them. It's a lot of damage. I would be wary of bringing in against a list with Ashiok because that has the potential to be a disaster.
A bit of a blowout.
It is really bad if that happens.
You know, Spark Trooper was one of my favorite cards when it was released. I wanted that to be a thing that people were doing. It doesn't look like it. You know, its shelf life isn't over yet in Standard, but it doesn't look like a thing people are doing.
I played it at the Pro Tour.
Yeah?
It was in my constructed deck.
How was it? I hope it was good. Yeah. I don't know.
Good.
I think I like Blistering Firecat and obvious other cards like Ball Lightning and stuff like that and Groundbreaker. And those cards have normally been good.
Those weren't allowed at the...
Well, that's true. But
it's just
I want a card like this to be sweet.
Decks like this, Magic's just kind of a different beast than it was 10 or 15 years ago. Back in the day, a lot of decks just didn't play to the board, didn't play much creature removal, and cards like Ball Lightning and Blistering Firecat were just really efficient at the cost. They're just more blockers, more first strike, more removal, more life gain. Magic's more robust than it used to be in terms of what kind of mechanics people play before, when it's just all basically just spells and a win condition, which is what a lot of old Magic decks are basically. Cards like Ball Lightning are really good for the cost, but nowadays it's much harder.
So, like, can we just print like a 10-1 Ball Lightning for 4 mana?
No.
Since there's so much more removal?
No.
Come on.
I mean, could. It would, it would lead to some games that ended kind of in an unsatisfying way, I believe, but, Spark Trooper also, of course, being 2 colors, immediately limits the range of decks it can go into.
That's true. That's true. We're taking a look at Fabiano's sideboard here. You asked about counter magic. Well, he does have some. and 2 copies of Gainsay, but they're not going to come in here, of course. Now, he's got a Duress, he's got an Obzad, he's got an Elspeth. To go with 2 Lifebane Zombies, 2 Doomblade, 2 Domestication, 2 Supreme Verdict, and 2 copies of Glare of Heresy. So, of these cards, I think Duress is obviously a good one. I like Obzad here, gain a little bit of life. It's not going to gain you a ton, but 2 is more than 0.
Obzad's really good here.
I actually like that card a lot in this particular matchup. Glare of Heresy, no, probably not. Supreme Verdict, probably not. Lifebane, probably not, even though it is like a creature that provides a fast clock that's unblockable, but I don't think Kasey actually plans on blocking very much. And then 2 copies of Doomblade and 2 copies of Domestication. There's nothing really exciting here in Fabiano's board, in my opinion, outside of that Obzad and the Duress. But at the same time, you don't really expect to be playing against Boros Burn in these tournaments, I don't think. You're preparing for, Devotion decks and Green Monsters and maybe Green-White and maybe Revelation decks, but you don't really prepare to play against a deck like this.
Domestication's not shabby against the Boros Reckoner Chandra's Phoenix deck, though.
Yeah, it's just, I think it's like a situation where, he's only got 8 creatures, and there might be a chance that he just boarded some of them out, too, because he knows you have access to removal, where he just wants to go creatureless. Because, I don't want to really play Boros Reckoner against an Esper deck. Even if it's a different Esper deck, I still don't like that card. It's just a 3/3 for 3 in this particular matchup. Phoenix is good, and I think he would leave that in. A Watery Grave from Fabiano going with his Temple of Silence, as Walton's going to untap his Temple of Silence and his Temple of Red-White. That's the official name, Temple of Red-White, right? It's actually Temple of Triumph that he's tapping here to go on with,
We might be making some trouble here.
Wow.
It's not another question that Kasey could be toiling here, actually, but it looks like he just sent a trouble over at Gerrard for the 7th spot.
Jeez.
It's a lot.
That is a lot of damage.
It's not a small amount.
No.
And these are the kind of game plans where you have no creatures and a lot of efficient burn spells, especially with Toil and Trouble, where you can actually pick up some edge in the post-board games.
Yeah, now Fabiano just wants to get cards out of his hand. Jeez, that was a huge hit.
And Kasey's hand is loaded.
There's got to be a lot of burn over there, right? I saw a Skullcrack. I didn't catch a great glimpse of it, but if he has another Toil Trouble, this game could be over before it even started. It doesn't look like he has one.
A Night Veil Spectre.
He's just going to pass the turn back here. So Fabiano will get to use the Spectre. He's going to come across for 2. Are we going to kill this? We are.
He must really like the card he left on top.
Yeah, it could be the 5th land.
Yeah.
For Assemble. Now, Fabiano isn't going to sideboard out his Jaces because Jace is just too powerful of a card. 4 mana. And it looks like, yeah, here is Jace. So Assemble, as you mentioned, might not be so good in this matchup because that Planeswalker bricks it all by itself. So now Kasey's going to draw a card. It was a Temple of Triumph. So he was protecting that with a Lightning Strike. He felt that was really, really important to protect. It does give him his 5th land and allow him to scry for Assemble.
Giving a Temple to Gerrard is also really bad for Kasey in that spot.
That's true.
It's another factor.
I think if you're Kasey, you just start putting that burn all to the head. He does have a Skullcrack. He's got a War Leader Helix in the grip. And, Fabiano, you take a look at his deck. Again, it's his innovative take. He has an Esper deck. When you think of Esper, you think of Sphinx's Revelation. You're not going to find that here. No copies of that card in his deck. He's taking a much more aggressive approach. He's going to go Skullcracking the Jace. And he's going to go Skullcracking the Jace again. Now, imagine if he just saved this burn for Gerrard's face.
Yeah, I think that this sort of game plan it's nearly impossible for Kasey to win the game this way. I understand the instinct to getting Jace off the table, but as you see, War Leader 6 and Assemble Legion, but he has to be as non-interactive as possible. He has to jam Gerrard with dead cards.
Fabiano's going to take the War Leader's Helix. That's bad news if you're Kasey, because that means that your Assemble Legion isn't going to do anything. Also, Assemble Legion is just pretty slow to the board.
Yeah. I used to bring it in myself, but then it was just never good ever in these games. So
now here is Assemble Legion, the card that Fabiano said that's perfectly fine. That resolves. So now Fabiano's going to take a draw. That's a Detention Sphere. So bye-bye War Leader's Helix. Excuse me, bye-bye Assembled Legion. Fabiano going to play a Swamp and just pass the turn back. So leaving up a little bit of mana. Could have gotten in there with a Mutavault, but chose not to. Maybe he's got that one Hero's Downfall in his hand right now.
Yeah, maybe want to be saving it for, haste creature or something like that. Gerrard's in firm control of the game, so I think he's just protecting himself against random stuff. Yeah, he had a far away in his hand. He just held up.
That's a better safe than sorry approach, I think. And in comes the Mutavault. Going to put Walton down to 14. I think he'd be perfectly fine if a burn spell was directed towards Mutavault as opposed to his face. Fabiano can't cast that Obsidian that's in his hand yet, but now that he has the second white source from the Temple of Silence last turn, he will be able to in the next turn. You see a Magma Jet here for Walton. We're going to see a burn spell on the instep, so Lightning Strike's going to go upstairs, going to have Fabiano down to 8. And you see, this is kind of the issue with his game plan. He's so conflicted because now he's just, he's pointing damage upstairs.
Yeah.
And now you saw earlier pointing damage towards Jace. Here's a Temple of Silence off the top. So, his damage is going in 2 different areas, and you have to stick to one game plan when you're playing a deck like this. You can't really shift, is the issue. You see Fabiano's going to tap some mana here, so it looks like it's going to be Obs at that time in a moment.
And this is the death knell right here.
Yeah, we'll see if he wants to cast it. You see him reorganizing his mana, see how he wants to do everything. And he's going to play Obsidian now. So that's going to come in. It's going to knock Fabiano up to 10, but more importantly, it's going to knock Walton down to 12. And that's going to shift out. And he'll come back for more in just a little bit. Walton takes a draw. He just passes the turn back here. So in comes Obsidian. Those 12 and 10s, they're going to shift. So Fabiano's going to be the healthier one now as he goes up to 12. Now Obsidian can get into the red zone here along with Mutavault if it would like to. Well, Fabiano thinks he wants to activate it. He's not sure. He's got some excess lands out there, it looks like.
Yeah, he's just, I guess, debating about whether or not he wants to be holding up mana for reactive cards.
Yeah, I don't think attacking with the Mutavault changes the clock at all, right? Because you attack for 5. If Mutavault had gotten in, it would be an attack for, you put him down to 3, and then Obsidian comes down and puts you into 1, so it's not going to kill him. Yeah. So at the end of the day, Walton reveals his hand, and he does concede the game. So Gerrard Fabiano, 13th on our Season 1 leaderboard. He moves on to 4-1 with Esper Devotion, a Esper deck without Sphinx's Revelation. Are you kidding me?